Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia Allen, Strategy Director at Children's Funding Project. Today, I'm speaking with Rochelle Wilcox, Hamilton Simmons-Jones, and Jillian Delos Reyes, three of the people who were instrumental in the success of the Yes for NOLA Kids campaign. Together, Rochelle, Hamilton, and Jillian achieved a major victory for early childhood in New Orleans when they secured 61% of the vote on April 30th on a ballot measure that will dedicate approximately $21 million in property tax revenue annually to new, high-quality, full-time early care and education opportunities for more than 1,000 infants, toddlers, and 3-year-olds. The measure will also support wraparound services for families like mental health consultation, social work, teacher professional development, and health and developmental screenings. Rochelle Wilcox is the Executive Director of Wilcox Academy for Early Learning and has been an early childhood education professional in Louisiana for more than 2 decades. Rochelle took the lead on organizing providers and families during this campaign. Hamilton Simmons-Jones is a consultant to United Way to help support the campaign for grade level reading and was also the secretary of Ready Kids New Orleans, the committee formed to lead, promote, and raise funds for the Yes for NOLA Kids campaign. Jillian Delos Reyes is the Director of Education and Youth Initiatives at the United Way of Southeast Louisiana, and during the campaign mobilized community partners via the New Orleans campaign for grade level reading. Congratulations, Rochelle, Hamilton, and Jillian. We're so glad to have you here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
it's excited to be here.
Thank you.
Rochelle, we're going to start with you and ask, as someone who's worked in early care and education in New Orleans for over 20 years, can you tell us what this win means for infants, toddlers, families, and providers?
Absolutely. It's monumental. It is life-changing. It is something that is going to change our early care and education for generations to come. This finally, as you stated, I've been in early care and education for over 20 years and have often felt undervalued, marginalized. Nobody really cares, but the success in this millage says different. It says that, New Orleans is a trailblazer, and we really want to make sure that we put where our future lies, and our future lies in our youngest, most vulnerable learners.
Definitely.
I just would also like to add the piece that I think is also so important to this is not only will our most vulnerable learners and their families get access to high quality care, but the wraparound services. We are in an environment or a time that has a lot of trauma. And when kids get into the school system, they may have someone look at them for mental health or other stressors. However, to be able to catch a developmental delay, to be able to have a family have resources for infant and toddler mental health is mind-blowing. These children will have early intervention sooner and maybe not even need it for a very long time. But the fact is that this is again monumental and so important in framing the rest of the trajectory of a child's life.
Yeah, it's a huge win for the whole community, as you all have shared with us. Hamilton, I want to ask, you've been working towards this win for years. Where did the idea for a dedicated voter-approved early childhood fund come from, and how long did it take you all to make that idea a reality in New Orleans?
Yeah, that's a great question, Olivia. It really builds on a lot of work that goes back about a decade to look at how do we expand access to early care and education in New Orleans. There were a number of working groups over the years, and I think there are 2 major things that happened. One is we were really trying to get city investment in early care and education, and that first happened with the budget the city council approved in the fall of 2017, that supported us with $750,000 that seeded a pilot with 50 children for what became called the NOLA City Seats program. That city money grew over time up to about $3 million a year, but was still, one of the challenges was, and we really started intentionally advocating in about 2019 to say, look, this money is great, And it's destabilizing to families and to childcare providers to not know whether they're going to have a seat next year and whether you're going to find the money in the budget next year. And that was when we really started to organize a consistent and persistent call for dedicated recurring money that we know will be there from year to year. And, we failed. We tried in fall of 2020 and it didn't work. And it was a much smaller ask in terms of the amount of money. But it also was a key step in building the momentum for people to, support that. The other thing just to say is, we had one of the other groups we had really gone to for funding was the school board, and the school, because the school board at the time was sitting on an $80 million reserve fund, and there are these huge unmet needs. And while we weren't able to get the school board to make a direct investment in seats, we got them to create a working group. And Rochelle, was part of that group, as well as, myself and a number of others, where, including the chair of the city council at the time, the president of the city council. We spent about 6 months really looking at every possible strategy that we thought could provide dedicated funding for expansion of early care and education. And this was absolutely one of the strategies, was this property tax. What's interesting is about 80% of the strategies required some state legislative action. So, much of those we've also been working on, but this was probably the biggest one that we knew we had the ability to move on locally, and they're really excited that it happened.
Yeah, one of my favorite tidbits about that is people would think after you lose, you go back and ask for less money, but that's not how this works. I think it's maybe 10 times more money, something like that you all are going to end up getting 10 times more slots, et cetera, wraparound services for kids, which is really amazing. Jillian, I want to ask specifically, we get a lot of questions these days about what are the messages that bring folks together and unite a broad range of stakeholders into a unified coalition. And I'd love for you to share a little bit with us about how you unified the coalition and what those messages were.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the auspicious things about this whole time period is the timing. The pandemic has really put a spotlight on the need for quality early education, and it has brought it to a level of national conversation that really helped our campaign. Folks across the country were feeling that squeeze of needing quality childcare. So that was a really main driver of why this is so important. But really, the messaging was driven by good data, and the partners that we had at the table, especially Louisiana Policy Institute for Children and others, could help us tell the story. This is the need, this is how we could address it, and this is how this lack of childcare and access to it is affecting our economy and all different levels of our community. And in addition to that, there's a moral imperative, but also a strategic imperative, right? So the moral imperative is that every child should have access to a quality early education. All of our children deserve that. And, we can tell that narrative from a heart space, but also from a head space. This has direct impact on our community. So on all the messaging was a little bit different, but it all rallied around let's have a child-centered city. What could that look like? And for the business sector, it was around economic returns. For our families, it was about economic stability within our community, and reliable care. And then for our community partners that are doing grassroots on the groundwork, it's all about labor equity, and taking a different lens on what public safety and community justice could look like when you make early investments in our children. So I would say the shared messaging, again, is the moral imperative, this is the right thing to do, but also it's the smart thing to do for all of us.
Definitely. I know this was not an easy campaign, though you all now, after the fact, have all of the messages that you use with various partners and are smiling and have $21 million more for kids annually. I'd love to know if for any of you, a particular challenge comes to mind when thinking about things you had to overcome during this campaign.
So for me, and we've talked about this a few times, as Hamilton said, this was our second attempt. So when we were going back, it was like trauma. It was oh my God, we're not sure. And then we're not sure about this. And I know I wasn't, as on the ground, having to talk to providers, really re-engaging parents, and our teachers. So because it was rough. That first go round was rough. And it's our faces, it's our faces, it's people coming to our centers. It's, it was really rough. However, as Jillian said, it's the heart of the work that made us say, you know what, it does not matter how hard it is. We've learned from it, coming back to the table, and then seeing who we had left, what stakeholders had we left out, right? So this time we really engaged the business community. Hamilton and Jillian can probably talk more about that. So, but engaging the business community and really seeing who we didn't include in the table, and bringing them to the table really expanded our partnerships in our communities and allowed them to be surrogates for us. So I think was the most challenging part, is re-engaging people and seeing who we did not include that we needed to include and to move it forward.
Thanks, Rochelle. Well, go ahead. Jillian, were you going to say something?
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry. Well, I just want to say thank you to all three of you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have, but Rochelle, I feel like that was a great note to end on. We've been so lucky to have you all as part of the Children's Funding Cohort and getting to know all of you at the Children's Funding Project. To learn more about how communities like New Orleans are funding increased access to high quality early childhood opportunities through ballot measure campaigns, visit our website at childrensfundingproject.org. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.